Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Okay, so today I have another car video for you, full of recommendations for romance novellas. So, I honestly am not a huge novella fan. I don't often find them to be satisfying for the type of reading experience that I want. However, this list has some of my all-time favorite novellas that I feel like gave me an extremely satisfying reading experience, as in like a complete story arc and a really satisfying romance. So we're going to go ahead and get into those. So the first one that I want to recommend is Curio. This is billed as an erotic novella, but I feel like it's really not, because the romance in here is very sweet and it's also not extremely explicit. But the concept of it is very interesting because we have our heroine who is about to turn 30 and she is still a virgin. She is ready to hand over her V-card and she's determined that she's going to hire this absolutely beautiful, stunning, well-regarded male model and prostitute in Paris to be her first. And so she proceeds to do that, but they don't really progress things beyond really very far at all through several nights until they finally do towards the end of the book. And as they are meeting in these, I guess, dates, it's not really a date because, you know, like, she is paying him, but they begin to get to know one another, and I just found this to be so satisfying on an emotional level because their interactions were very interesting. This hero is so sweet and swoony. He comes with a lot of baggage, and she's really the first one that he's able to open up to. It was just so lovely, and I adored it. This novella did kind of end a little abruptly. It is the first in a series, so you could go right on to the next one. That's really the only negative that I have about this book, is that it ended a little bit too abruptly, but overall, this really wowed me with the depth of emotion and the nuance in the relationship, and I thought it was just such a wonderful read. Okay, so now I have two by Mimi Matthews. She is a historical romance author that I have recently fallen in love with, and so far at this point I've only read her novellas. So the first one I'm going to talk about is A Holiday by Gaslight. I am recommending this just in a broad novella recommendations because I love it so much, and if you are a historical romance reader who also loves North and South, the BBC production, you absolutely have to read this. Mimi has said herself that this is her love letter to North and South, which is like my favorite period film after, obviously 2005 Pride and Prejudice. But, I mean, at times, I don't know, do I love Mr. Thornton more? I don't know. We'll have to have a battle of the classic adaptations. That would be fun. Anyway, this is such a wonderful book to anyone who loves that show or that book, because it is a very similar concept where our heroine, you know, she is a lady, she's caught the attention of this merchant, this self-made man, and they're having a little, like, you know, like, he's pursuing her, he wants to marry her. She doesn't really know if she has feelings for him, and she's not sure that she wants to actually marry somebody who she believes to be lower than her. So one night she ends up deciding to give him one last chance, and it was just so satisfying. Really, if you love North and South, you have to read this. It's a very short read. It's just, Mimi Matthews is a beautiful writer, and I adore her. This was fantastic. The other book I have by her is actually her debut novella, her debut book, actually, and it is The Lost Letter. So this is a really fun one because it's based around our couple who fell in love early on in their younger years, and then he got called away to war. That she thought that he loved her. She was deeply in love with him. So he gets called to war. She writes him letters. They sort of courted before he went to war, and her letters never end up getting delivered. And so he is under the impression that she just kind of scorned him and wanted somebody better who wasn't scarred or whatever. And she's under the impression that he actually didn't love her because he never responded to her letters. So there is that miscommunication there with the lost letters. He's a scarred, damaged hero. He is a little bit grumpy and brooding, and she is a very sunshine, sweet person who, you know, finds herself in dire straits from her father who committed suicide because of the debts that were consuming him. And so she takes a job to be his caretaker, the man that she fell in love with. Like, it's just beautifully done. Again, very, very sweet, very epic, romantic feeling, second chance. I just loved it so much. Now, another one that I want to recommend is, again, by J.L. Seegers. I'm a huge fan of J.L. Seegers. I think she's a fantastic author. I really, really love how she packs her romances with so much nuance in the relationship, where I feel like you're constantly peeling back layers in the character's psyche and understanding their motivations and why they're behaving the way they do. They usually always end up having something that has torn them apart that is largely internal, and I really, really vibe with that. That's probably my favorite thing. So this is a second chance romance with a divorced couple who ends up going on a travel destination wedding for their relatives of some sort. I think maybe it's her cousins, I'm not entirely sure. And the husband is determined to win her back. She ended up leaving him. They had some struggles with infertility, and she believed that he cheated on her, and it was just really gut-wrenching and heartbreaking for her. So this man is going above and beyond to win her back. This book is seductive, it is romantic, it is just stunning, and I love it so much. Okay, now the next book that I have is Let Us Dream by Alyssa Cole. This is another novella. This is set in, I think it's 1917 Harlem, New York. And it is about our heroine who used to be a cabaret performer and now has been able to purchase her own business and is a cabaret business owner. She's really trying very hard to progress the women's rights movement so that all women can vote, and that means all women, including women of color like herself. So she's using this power that she has over the men who really, really, really like her to sort of influence them to progress the vote forward so that women can have the vote too. And in comes our hero, who is an immigrant from India. He is a chef and he's looking for a job. He came to America thinking this was going to be the great American dream, only to realize that Americans really did not embrace him, and, you know, they shunned him because of the color of his skin and where he came from, and so he's having a hard time finding a job. He does end up working for our heroine as a cook in her, cabaret, and this man worked so hard to get her affection, to get her attention. She's definitely a closed-off heroine who doesn't really trust and doesn't want to fall in love, and it was just so beautiful watching her soften towards him. And again, this is one of those that I do feel like the romance sort of ended up being abruptly resolved, but I didn't really mind that because this was just a beautiful story and I loved these characters so much. Okay, now this one is one of my all-time favorite romance novellas, and it is Briarly. This is an Beauty and the Beast retelling, but it is set, I believe it's set during the time of either World War I or World War II, I'm not entirely sure, so it's a little bit more modern than typical Beauty and the Beast, which are like Renaissance era type of setting. And this is so interesting because our Beast is a character who has had this curse on him for so many years, and he cannot break it. He's tried so many women. He believes himself to be unlovable and to be unable to love until, our hero, who is the father of the young woman who ends up getting captured by the Beast, our hero comes in to take her place and stays in her place, and he is the one who ends up falling in love with the Beast. And it is so absolutely stunning and beautiful. I feel like I really wish more people would read this because I think this is one of the most beautifully written romances that is very tender, that is very emotional, that really shows them moving from, like antagonists, they don't like each other, to friends, to lovers, and it's just heartbreakingly beautiful, and I loved it so much. Okay, now the last novella that I have is one by a favorite author of mine, and it is Tycoon by Joanna Shupe. This little novella really packs a punch and gives you such a great romance and a great story in such a short amount of time. This is actually the beginning of her Knickerbocker series, which is her first Gilded Age historical romance set in America. This is such an interesting premise because we have our heroine, who is a very independent woman. She left her family in the Midwest to come to the city to be, work and make a name for herself, make a career for herself. She ends up witnessing a crime, and the people who perpetrated the crime know that she witnessed, and so they are out to get her. So she finds herself on the run. She ends up at a train station, and she sort of just rushes up to our hero and embraces him in a kiss and hopes that he goes along with it. And of course he does, because he's like, wow, who is this beautiful woman who just sort of accosted me and kissed me? Like, thank you, I like it. And he ends up going along with her. She doesn't really tell him him exactly why she's running, so that's a little bit of a miscommunication between the two of them. But the way he was just so protective of her and really, really, really wanted to make sure she was safe, and all of this takes place on the train, which was also like really fun and unique. I feel like that doesn't happen very often. This had a great resolution, this had some steam, this had great chemistry and connection, and we also got to see a little bit of the heroine's family, and they are just such a fun, enjoyable group of characters. I just really, really loved and adored this, and I actually feel like this may have been the first book that I ever read by Joanna Shupe, and I read this and I was like, wow, I was so impressed with her storytelling and with her characters and her romance, and this is an underrated gem, and if you like historical romances and you're looking for something that is satisfying but short, I'd highly recommend this one. So, alright my friends, there you have it. Those are my absolute favorite romance novellas. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have a favorite romance novella that you want to recommend, please leave it down below. I'm sure I didn't get to all of them, but these were just some of my favorites. And if you have made it this far, please feel free to leave me a bird emoji for spring, and I'll see y'all in my next video.